And amazingly, this is one of the few prophets in all of the Bible that the people listen to. And they begin to rebuild the temple in response to this. And in 522 BC, they finish and dedicate the new temple. Now, it's interesting because apparently, compared to the old temple, there were a few people that were around in the days of Solomon's temple, and apparently this one wasn't quite as jazzy, and the people they weep because it just doesn't have the pizzazz of the old one. But what's cool about this one is this is the one Jesus Christ is going to walk into one day. And by the time he gets there, by the way, for 46 years, Herod the Great undertakes a building project that by the time of Christ, it's the most magnificent structure in the ancient world. But at this point in time, it's a little bleak. So they get the temple rebuilt. The second phase of the return takes place a little bit later. And that is that even though you have a temple, the city still lies barren. And in those days, you don't have a city till you have walls, okay? And there are no walls around Jerusalem. In 445 BC, the cupbearer to the king at that point in time, and the king now was a king by the name of Artaxerxes. This is a little bit, not like 100%, they haven't put all of this together, but the best scholarship would indicate that the whole story of Esther, the whole one night with the king thing, if you have seen the movie, Esther gets picked, she saves her people. The king at the time of Esther is a king by the name of Xerxes, okay? Well, so think about Esther married to Xerxes and then recognize that after Xerxes, his son Artaxerxes takes the throne, and it's Artaxerxes who now issues the command to go back and restore and rebuild Jerusalem. You got to think there was some influence here in this whole thing. And so the guy that leads the second group back to build the walls is a man by the name of Nehemiah, and that's what the book of Nehemiah tells, the second return. Really a key date, by the way, because we know that the date that Artaxerxes issued the command to restore and rebuild Jerusalem was 445 BC. And we won't get into all of this tonight. Maybe you might remember if you went through the book of Revelation when we looked at Daniel's prophecy, again of the 70 weeks of Daniel, the trigger on that prophecy was from the command to rebuild and restore Jerusalem, there will be 77s. And this is the command that triggers Daniel's prophecy. And from there, you can count down the rebuilding of the city, the coming of Messiah, the death of Messiah, and the destruction of Jerusalem. It all triggers off of this event that takes place in 445 BC. So rebuilding the walls is the second subplot. And then the third subplot is sort of woven into here, and that is along with building the temple and building the walls, they need to build the people again. Because again, you've got another generation. A generation has now passed that lived through the destruction of Jerusalem, and now you've got another generation that needs to be called back to God, His Word, obedience, and faithfulness. And the character that is called to rebuild the people is a man by the name of Ezra. And Ezra begins to teach the Scriptures to the people that have come out of exile. And there's this great moment then in the book of Nehemiah where again, the people are called to make a recommitment to the covenant. And they recommit to the covenant. Kind of the final scene in the return that's really this sort of brings closure to the action of the story here, but kind of the final message of Act 1 is found in the prophet Malachi. And in the last book, which is a prophecy in the Old Testament, Malachi says that, he gives the prophecy that Elijah is coming again. And, of course, Elijah had been gone a long time, okay? And that Elijah is coming again, and the prophecy that when he comes, he's going to bring the coming of the day of the Lord. And with that final prophecy, it's as if the curtain now, the screen goes black again. This has been a long first act, which isn't normal in a story, because usually the first act is very short and launches you into a long second act. It's been a long first act. We probably will have intermission at this point in time in the story, but the screen will go to black, and the next time it comes up again, we're going to have that message again 400 years later, and what we're going to see is the fulfillment of the prophecy of Elijah coming again to prepare the way of the Lord, and will open on John the Baptist and the story of Jesus. And the stage is set for Act 2.